We have some major breaking news. The Latinas for Trump founder has just condemned and blasted Donald Trump's inhumane immigration policy. Quote, inhumane is what she called it. A Miami Republican who co-founded the group, Latinas for Trump, is condemning President Donald Trump's mass deportation campaign and blasting recent immigration enforcement actions as harmful. Now, this comes off the back of a major escalation in Los Angeles after Donald Trump has, number one, deployed the National Guard, officially signed that memorandum, but number two, Los Angeles protesters and immigration authorities such as ICE and Border Patrol had been in an ever-escalating battle where, ICE will throw projectiles such as flashbangs and other things, and then rocks are thrown back, and it continues to escalate, but now Trump is taking it to a new level. And before we even read more about this Latinos for Trump, the question is, didn't he run on this? Didn't Donald Trump run on this explicit thing? What were those signs that they had up at the RNC that said mass deportation now? Where was this Latinas for Trump person when Trump was speaking at the RNC while they were holding these up? I just don't understand. Oh, this is ironic. Peace through strength when we have maybe the weakest president in the history of the planet. But to continue, this Miami Republican who co-founded this group is now condemning it and blasting it as harmful. Quote, this is not what we voted for, State Senator Aliana Garcia said in a statement Saturday. I am so sorry. This is what you voted for, though. Donald Trump explicitly campaigned on this. Quote, I have always supported Trump through thick and thin. However, this is unacceptable and inhumane. Were there any tells during the campaign cycle that Trump had an inhumane view on immigration? Did he say any crazy lines about immigrants eating cats and dogs? This was all very obvious. And sorry, I don't mean to be reveling in the irony of her coming out and saying, admitting she was wrong. We should actually think this is a good thing. But how can you say that this is not what you voted for? That is a line that I take a lot of problems with. And now that you see the ever-escalating protests throughout LA, where the Trump administration is very clearly trying to squash dissent, let's make that very, very clear. They are trying to build a narrative. The narrative they're trying to build is that immigrants are violent and that anybody who protests on their behalf are also violent and they all need to be squashed and it's all justified. We need to be breaking that narrative. Number one, the protests weren't even that rowdy. Number two, even if they were rowdy, Governor Gavin Newsom said all day he was providing any resources necessary. Governor Gavin Newsom was saying, we want to make this safe. We want to make sure that people do this in a safe way, and we will provide the resources so that everybody is safe, which I think is a responsible thing to do. Put some guardrails on Trump's deportation, yet Trump still escalates with the National Guard. That is the key distinction. Trump still escalates with the National Guard. The public remarks from one of Trump's longtime supporters come as the president's immigration policies cause stress and uncertainty in South Florida. Well, not just South Florida, but also all the way across the country in LA as well. And, before these protests even broke out and before the National Guard was deployed, which is happening right now, there were also a lot of deportation problems with due process, with the Fifth Amendment, with the 14th Amendment, with the ability for somebody to get a notice, to challenge it in courts, and to actually go through the process. But to continue, the public remarks from one of the supporters comes as there's uncertainty. Trump's executive orders and the Department of Homeland Security's actions have targeted hundreds of thousands of immigrants in the region, including Cubans and Venezuelans, communities that threw their support behind Trump during the November election, helping him win Miami-Dade County. As top White House aide Stephen Miller reportedly demands 3,000 immigration arrests a day, federal agents in Miami and across the U.S. are swooping onto courthouses to detain people. Okay, just to back up. This is absolutely not how you do things. I just want to be crystal clear and add some nuance, okay? There is a place for immigration debate. We can talk about the policy at the border, what the asylum process looks like, how we can streamline the asylum process to make it safe and efficient, but that's not what's happening here. This is brute force to send a message. This is not a debate about policy. This is trying to squash dissent. And what I want to build on top of that by saying is when Stephen Miller says he wants to deport 3,000 arrests a day, that is absolutely absurd. And that means that inherently you are going to be skirting the proper processes like due process that allow these things to be safe. So when you're trying to deport or arrest 3,000 immigrants a day, you are necessarily going to make it violent. And what we're witnessing in LA, just really quickly before we talk more about the Latinos for Trump founder, because this is very important, is just a grotesque abuse of power. The Trump admin is now trying to flood Latino neighborhoods with federal agents. After they did that over the past few days and people started protesting, they decide to further escalate and deploy the National Guard. It's not only a war on civil liberties, but it's a war that's building off of everything else Trump has been doing for a bit. It's not a one-off either. There's a repeated pattern of this. With Trump casting a wider immigration enforcement net, Latino Republicans in South Florida are balancing their support for the White House and their constituents. Next week, Miami's GOP delegation in Washington is slated to meet with Trump's Homeland Security Secretary. Quote, "I understand the importance of deporting criminal aliens," said the Republican Trump supporter. "But what we are witnessing are arbitrary measures to hunt down people who are complying with their immigration hearings." Actually, very well said for a Republican. In many cases, with credible fears of persecution claims, all driven by Miller-like desire to satisfy a self-fabricated deportation goal. Very, very interesting. Very well said. This undermines a sense of fairness and justice that the American people value. This is actually a really solid take. Arbitrary measures to hunt down people who are already complying with their immigration cases, that's incredibly, incredibly cruel. In a statement, White House spokeswoman Abigail Jackson defended the administration's record, saying that, quote, "Any illegal alien who is deported from the United States receives due process." Wrong. Lie. She is lying, and they know they're lying because they just brought Kilmar Armando Abrego Garcia back into the U.S. because they admitted that they made a mistake.
We have major breaking news right now. Donald Trump has officially signed a presidential memorandum deploying 2,000 National Guardsmen to Los Angeles, to California right now. Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt has just issued a statement saying, in part, quote, "In the wake of this violence, California's feckless Democrat leaders have completely abdicated their responsibility to protect their citizens. That is why President Trump has signed a presidential memorandum deploying 2,000 National Guardsmen to address the lawlessness that has been allowed to fester. The Trump administration has a zero-tolerance policy for criminal behavior and violence, especially when that violence is aimed at law enforcement officers trying to do their jobs." Folks, the National Guard has officially been or will soon be deployed to California. The president has signed the memorandum.
It will officially soon be deployed, and it was unnecessary. It is a complete unnecessary escalation. Sorry that I keep repeating those two words, unnecessary escalation, but I think that's the best way to put it, and that's essentially what Governor Gavin Newsom said. He said at first, "As the federal government conducts chaotic immigration sweeps across the country, the state is deploying additional CHP to maintain safety on Los Angeles highways and to keep the peace. It's not their job to assist in federal immigration enforcement. The federal government is sowing chaos so they can have an excuse to escalate." Absolutely agree. This is not the way any civilized country behaves. He then built on that by saying, "The federal government is moving to take over the California National Guard and deploy 2,000 soldiers. That move is purposefully inflammatory and will only escalate tensions." The reason why, I want to be crystal clear with these arguments because Democrats have had weak messaging on immigration for the past few years. Get mad at that if you want. Democrats have had weak messaging on immigration over the past few years, and that has led to Donald Trump filling that vacuum with some absolutely insane far-right rhetoric. Now, when I'm making these points, I want to be crystal clear when I'm talking about what's wrong here. If there's someone doing sex trafficking and human trafficking, yeah, get them out. That's not what we're arguing against. Governor Gavin Newsom then said, "LA authorities are able to access law enforcement assistance at a moment's notice. We are in close coordination with the city and county, and there is currently no unmet need. The Guard has been admirably serving LA throughout recovery. This is the wrong mission and will erode public trust." Going back to the story about the Latinos for Trump that is now turning against him, Garcia's statement came a day after GOP Representative Maria Elvira Salazar, a strong Trump supporter whose district Garcia represents in Tallahassee, made her own public declarations about the federal immigration agenda. In a separate statement, Salazar said that people navigating their immigration cases, like pending asylum or green card petitions deserve to go through the legal process. And this is where the real problem lies. There are a lot of real problems, but this is what really infuriates me right here. They're hunting down people who are already complying with their immigration cases. And that's what Garcia points out, the Trump supporter. Garcia says you can't have arbitrary measures to hunt down people who are already complying with their immigration cases. Then, what incentive do people have to ever comply with their immigration cases? Then, people are incentivized to continue skirting the law if following the law gets them this exact same result. What they're doing here is incredibly dumb, and that's what pisses me off. People who are following the law are still being cooked. Salazar, who is a Cuban American, described herself as a proud Republican and said that the admin must fulfill President Trump's promise to, quote, kick out every criminal here illegally. But she said the uncertainty in her largely Hispanic district had left her heartbroken and said recent measures threaten due process. Quote, I will always stand with justice and with our community. One more time, make sure you drop a like and subscribe.